If you visit the city of Edinburgh, your attention is likely to be drawn to one of its most prominent landmarks, this hill called Arthur's Seat. Locals call it the Crouching Lion. Its distinctive shape can be recognised from all points of the compass. Few cities have a miniature mountain like this at their heart, and as you walk round the city, your eye is drawn to it. The hill is the dominant feature of Holyrood Park, also called the Queen's Park, as it's part of the Crown Estate. The park is one of the gems in Edinburgh's crown. A place of beauty and historical interest, much loved by those who live in the city and by those who come to visit it. Arthur's Seat is part of the remains of an extinct volcano. The summit is a volcanic plug. The lava left behind in the vent when the volcano cooled and died. These nearby cliffs are called Salisbury Crags. Geologists call them a volcanic sill, formed by lava squeezing its way between two layers of rock. The shapes of Arthur's Seat and the crags are the result of erosion caused by sheets of ice from the last ice age. Crossing from west to east, the ice severely eroded the west-facing slopes, but deposited stony clay on the eastern lee slopes. Hence, prehistoric men found enough depth of soil to make these terraces for growing crops. The ice sheets melted away about 15,000 years ago, leaving the landscape much as we see it today. To the south of the summit of Arthur's Seat lie Samson's Ribs, another striking legacy from the volcanic period. Basaltic lava forms into columns like these when it's allowed to cool very slowly, as when one layer is quickly covered by another. During the early 1980s, part of a rib fell onto the roadway below, endangering passing traffic. Stabilisation work was put in hand and completed in 1985 to prevent further falls. A number of unusual plants survive on these rocks because of their inaccessibility. The park has played an important role in the historical development of geological science. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, a great geological controversy raged over the formation of what we now call igneous or volcanic rocks. The German geologist Werner maintained that these rocks were precipitated as sediments from a primeval ocean. James Hutton, then Professor of Geology at Edinburgh University, held the view that they were formed from molten material which had ascended from the interior of the earth and consolidated within the crust. Evidence to support Hutton's theory was found when quarrying work was done here on Salisbury Crags. This part of the rock face, exposed during the quarrying, is known as Hutton's section. Hutton recognised that it could only be explained by hot molten rock being forced through between layers of sandstone and mudstone, baking the surfaces of the layers with which it came into contact. Hutton's theory prevailed, and he is now regarded as one of the founding fathers of modern geology. The park attracts geologists and other scientists to this day, but most of those who come here are looking for rest and recreation, or just to enjoy the beauty of the park and its surroundings. Many, like me, come because they like to get their exercise out in the fresh air. come here 3 or 4 days a week for jogging, like many other people, and my route takes me past some of the main places of interest on the park. The first landmark on the route is St Margaret's Loch. The site of the loch was formerly an area of marshland, kept wet by waters filtering down from the heights above, known as Hunter's Bog. In 1856, Queen Victoria's consort, Prince Albert, arranged for the waters from Hunter's Bog to be drained down into the ornamental loch we see today. Despite there being virtually no food in the loch, it is visited by many wildfowl, scrounging for titbits from visitors. Geese are common, as are mute swans, coots and gulls. Looking down on the loch are the ruins of St Anthony's Chapel. Tradition says that the chapel was founded to guard the nearby Holy Well. A hermit tended the altar, and at night a lamp burned in the tower to remind mariners on their journeys up the River Forth to dedicate their prayers to St Anthony. St Anthony's Well can still be seen. It was originally fed by a spring, but that has long since been closed off, and it's now fed only by rainwater. I doubt if St Anthony would be willing to drink from it today. Leaving the loch and chapel behind, my jogging route takes us up along the top of Salisbury Crags. From up here, you can look down on Holyrood Palace. Legend has it that in 1128, King David I was hunting in the park when he was attacked by a particularly large stag and thrown from his horse. The stag disappeared, leaving behind a crucifix formed from a branch of its antlers. The king interpreted this as a call for him to found an abbey, and so the Abbey of the Holyrood came into being. My route continues up to the top of the crags, where there is another place of interest. This notch in the rocks is about the highest point in the crags, and it's known locally as the Cat's Neck. About 30 years ago, a man pushed his new wife to her death off a point somewhere round about here to claim on her insurance. He didn't get away with it. Running on down the other side of the crags, ahead lies another landmark, the Gutted Haddie. On 13 September 1744, one of the worst storms of rain and hailstones ever seen burst over Edinburgh. The hailstones measured 5 inches round. The cloudburst over Arthur's Seat was devastating. It tore a passage down the western face of the hill and deposited loose stones and gravel, where it rests to this day, forming the shape of a gutted haddock. This face of the hill is still prone to water erosion. In 2003, this stone-pitched path was built alongside the Gutted Haddie to make the approach safe for walkers. Just beyond the Gutted Haddie is this path known as Piper's Walk. So called because in 1778 a piper paced up and down here to play and keep up the spirits of the Seaforth Highland Regiment, who during a short-lived mutiny were encamped at the summit of Arthur's Seat for 3 nights. My normal jogging route takes me down this track and back to Hunter's Bog, but today we'll run up these steps to the summit of Arthur's Seat. The summit of Arthur's Seat affords fine views over the city and across the estuary of the River Forth. To the north, across the water into Fife, you can view these hills called the East and West Lowmans. To the east, you can see North Berwick Law and the Bass Rock. To the south lie the neighbouring Pentland Hills. And to the northwest, beyond the road and rail bridges over the River Forth, lie the beckoning Scottish Highlands. Running on down towards the Nether Hill, the haunch of the sleeping lion, brings us to views of landmarks to the south of the park. From up here, you can look down on Prestonfield House, which dates back to the 14th century. A traditional tale tells that one of its former owners was losing heavily at a game of cards and staked the house, winning on the turn of the ace of clubs. To celebrate, he planted trees around the house to form the cloverleaf shape of the ace of clubs. You can still see the outline of the shape from up here on the Nether Hill. To the east of Prestonfield House is Duddingston Loch, the only natural loch in the park and now a bird sanctuary. The reeds in this loch used to be harvested for thatching. In 1985, new lanes were cut among the reeds to provide more nesting places and shelter for wildfowl, and today this area forms the Bosinch Wildlife Reserve, designated a site of special scientific interest. Just by the northern shore of Duddingston Loch is this gap called the Windy Gowl, a man-made gap in the rocks through which the road and the wind make their way. Between the Windy Gowl and the loch is this cliff, known as the Gurnall Crag. The story is told that during the 18th century, a young man from Perthshire became destitute, and hunger forced him to take up the post of public hangman. He then prospered, receiving a sum of money for every execution. It was a time of religious upheaval, when many a good man was condemned to the gallows for his religious beliefs and not for any crime, and the public hangman was generally despised by the townsfolk. He therefore resorted to disguise when he went out. One day he was recognised and chased by a mob, and to escape he jumped to his death from the Gurnall Crag at a spot which has since been known as the Hangman's Crag. There have been many incidents of violence and death associated with Holyrood Park, but one of the most puzzling concerns the discovery of these miniature coffins. In the summer of 1836, some schoolboys were investigating rabbit burrows somewhere here on the northeast side of Arthur's Seat, the exact location not being known. In a small recess guarded by 3 stone slates, they found 17 small wooden coffins in 2 rows of 8, with a single coffin apparently marking the start of a 3rd row. Sadly, many were damaged or lost, but 8 remain and are now housed in the National Museum of Scotland. Various explanations have been offered for their existence. Some relate to witchcraft, others refer to a practice relating to men lost at sea or in foreign wars. When their bodies could not be recovered for burial, they would be buried in effigy, in wooden coffins such as these. However, recent scholarship tends to the view that they may have been placed as a symbolic atonement for the Westport murders carried out by Burke and Hare, who killed 17 innocent victims. The carving of the coffins is crude and thought to have been the work of a cobbler rather than a wood craftsman. The metal fastenings are also thought to have come from decorations for ladies' shoes. William Burke earned part of his living from repairing shoes. Could his have been the hand that carved these coffins? The true explanation may never be known, dying with the unknown gravedigger who placed them here on Arthur's Seat. Holyrood Park has witnessed many episodes in its history and continues to do so to this day. The plastic sheeting covering this building will soon be removed to reveal the latest development in Scotland's long history, its new Parliament. And for those of us who frequent the park as a favourite haunt, there will soon be a new landmark to look down on as we plod our way round this remarkable feature of Edinburgh's landscape.